NYHC. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. There's lots of fiction from the truth. Society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got their fucking opinion.
What's happening? Good to see everyone once again. This is it. This is why we're all here for the next 2 hours or so. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. What's going on? All right, Ray Hogan, what's happening? Gertie McCracken, yes. What's going on in the UK, John? It's kind of like a little bit of a UK-themed show today. So this is everybody over there in the UK, get ready. Hey, Sean Brennan, good show down in Maryland on Friday. Yo, Rich Zola, what's happening? Oh, what's up in Scotland, man? All right, here we go. Good to see you, Vinny. Hope you're feeling all right, Vinny. Big Vinny, you know. Jonathan Zimos, hi, already here from PPN, Colorado. What's PPN, Colorado? Not sure of that one. North Ireland in the house. Good. Where my UK people at? You know? Hello from Cleveland. Well, hi, Krista. Thank you for coming through. Speaking of Cleveland, hey, Fitzgibbon. Wow. Shouting out my elementary school buddy, Gavin Fitzgibbon. What's happening? Wow. Good to see you, buddy. Hey, Paul. Hey, Kostabi, I got to reach out to you one of these days. Want you to come on the show, Paul. And thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Piermont, New York. Paul Kostabi in the house. We got to get you on, Paul, if you're up for it one of these days. Wow, they're coming out of the woodwork. What's up, Derek Murphy? Good to see you, Delish. Chris Hoffman. Drummer Mike in Long Island. Good. The gang's all here. Astoria, Queens. And, of course, Long Island. Of course, Comac, Long Island.
Comac, straight out of Comac.
Straight out of Comac.
Is that Kostabi, the artist, Kostabi?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Use Your Illusion 1 and 2?
I don't know if he did that. Not sure.
The covers of those?
No, I don't think he did Use Your Illusion. I don't know.
Those are
No.
That's a different Kostabi.
Isn't that Williams that did that? Robert Williams did
that?
No.
No. He did Appetite.
Ah. Oh, yeah. Shouting Out. Yeah. That's Sean Brennan. Yeah. Scarlet X. Yeah. It's Ina. Yeah. He was in the band with Zum and them and Zum's wife, Shoshana.
Oh, nice.
What's that sound I hear, bro? Something dripping?
That is the ceiling. It's raining in my kitchen right now.
What happened?
The pipe burst upstairs, and
pipe burst. It just burst.
It rotted apparently.
Rotted. Wait a second. Rotted. What are you like? What is this like? What is this like? An old Roman like clay pipe? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know steel pipes rot.
Well, whatever it is, I have 3 different pails and buckets because the ceiling is about to become a shower room. So. It's not too good, and I'm just glad it's in the kitchen and not over my collection of stuff. So
you better get the
yeah.
Turn the water off, bro.
Yeah, I'm getting a raft and some oars is what I'm doing. But how was the Savage Mountains?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a brutal drive down there. It was like a 5.5 hour drive, but we crushed it. It was great. And the promoter who put on the festival just does it right. He treats the bands right. The venue was beautiful. It was an old Eagles Hall or something. Huge venue. Treated, really nice catered food backstage.
Oh, that's cool.
We got up there and crushed it. It was a lot. It was a lot of work, Yo, Big Rob, Bitter Uproar. What's up, bro?
How was Scream?
Scream was great. I saw Scream. I
Nice.
saw Scream. You know what? Wait, did I download a couple shots? This was interesting. They were doing like a tattoo thing upstairs, and they had like, it was one of those events where they had tattooing upstairs and whatever, and on the tattoo flash you could get the Incendiary Device logo.
Oh, look at that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Who will be the first to get it?
You know what? Not me. Not me. First off, I don't want to get tattooed.
Side of the head. Do it.
I don't want to get tattooed before I have to get on stage. You know, that's a little rough.
Here's tattooed on stage.
You know, tattoos hurt, man. Here's a weird shot of us playing. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. Look, Mike and Tristan and the stage manager watching us, but it was cool. It was a great show. It was really great. Great. Yeah. You know, Sean, it was a great crowd. We crushed it. It was great.
Oh, nice. Oh, Mike's got the good A7 shirt on.
Ah, right. I didn't notice. Nice. You know, I don't talk to the guys in my band, you know, and they know not to talk to me.
No eye contact allowed.
You know, if you need to talk to me, you speak to you speak to Larry Kelly, and then Larry Kelly will come and talk to me.
He whispers in your ear.
Yeah.
More in the monitor space.
I only want to interact with one human being. Everyone, you know, it has to feel, you know, it's kind of like an Elvis thing, you know, but
taking care of business.
Anyway, you know what? Instead of photo of the day, let's do stub of the day. It is stub of the day. So here we go. Anybody can lend any perspective. This is stub of the day.
Oh, there's a good one.
This is Quicksand at the Academy here in New York City on Saturday, April 3rd, 1993.
It's 31 years ago.
31 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I used to love that room, the Academy. I thought that was a cool place to see shows.
The Academy was interesting. Of course, you know what? Actually, now that we're oh, here we go. Story Lou right out of the gate. I was at this Quicksand show. Went to many shows at the old Academy. Saw Ride in the Sundays.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what we did. Anybody know what video that Paris Mayhew and myself, 2 videos we did that were partially shot at the Academy? Anybody?
I think I do.
Don't listen. You keep your trap shut. You think it's raining in there now, bro? I'll make it rain in there.
Make it rain.
I'll fucking make it rain in there. Hold on. I'm looking for the picture. Hold on.
Pictures
of Lily. Lily. Oh, Lily. Where is that shot? No, that's not it. Hold on. Here it is. Okay. Also, at the Academy, I'm sure people get it because we freaking talk about it all the time. Saw Sonic Youth there. No. Okay. Was it Shades of Grey? Was it Onyx? Was it Slam? You know what? It was all of the above. We shot, not only did we shoot footage for the Biohazard Shades of Grey video there, but we also shot footage for the Bionics Slam and Biohazard video there. So we killed 2 birds with one Drew Stone, as we say.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Yep. So
you know what was an amazing Academy show I went to? Keith Richards on New Year's Eve with the Expensive Winos.
Wasn't that at the Beacon?
No, it was the Academy, and the opening band was Pearl Jam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was 92 into 93.
So, yeah. So this Quicksand show, I believe, was kind of when they were really riding on the crest of the Slip album. This is when they were really popping here. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they had done I had seen them at Roseland with Rage Against the Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before this.
Yeah.
And they were just, I mean, that first record, first tour, that first, flawless. Like that to me is a perfect. Slip is perfect. And seeing that tour was amazing.
So the Academy was an old Broadway theater. It was right off like Times Square. It was like, it was an old Broadway theater that I think the Academy was around for maybe 2 years, if that,
Yeah, I think you're right, because it just feels like it was just there one day and then gone the next.
Yeah.
But I saw a lot of good shit came through there though in that time period.
Yeah, the Marquee was all the way west on 21st Street. Yeah.
Yep. I saw Nirvana at the Marquee.
Yeah, those Onyx videos, I guess you could call them fun. It's like, I don't know if fun's the word. I mean, fun. They were fun for a lot of people. I don't know if they were fun for me. I mean, yeah, it's some level, but when you're the producer and you're doing something like that, you're just waiting for the next disaster to hit, so you could like run and extinguish the fire as fast as possible. So, yeah, there you go. All right. Well, I hope that you, Scott Earth, what's up? You know who I saw at the Marquee? I mean, it is the Marquee. I saw the Archangels there. That was interesting. Yo, you know who I saw at the Marquee? I saw the Johnny Thunder and the Heartbreakers reunion at the Marquee. And you know what? It was friggin' great.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, like, me and Nunzio, from Antidote back, we went and we got really close, and they came out and they were friggin' great. It must have been, I don't know, 88, 89 maybe.
Wow.
They were great. They were great.
Archangels, was Charlie Sexton in that band?
Yeah, Charlie Sexton and Randall Bramlett. Yeah. Yep.
He plays with Dylan now, I believe.
Yeah, he's been with Dylan for a while. Yeah, Fugazi played the Marquee. That's right. Yep.
Ray Hogan hanging out with Fugazi the other night.
Saw that.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
All right. Well, I hope the Romans come over and fix your.
Me too.
It's like.
Me too.
Sucks,
I don't even want to tell you. It's very stressful, but
that's why That's why. Yeah. Owning a house is tough, man. It's tough.
Hear you. Well, here's a question: when you tie the knot, you staying where you are? You guys moving to the country? What?
Oh, I can't. All right, hold on a second. Hold on. Oh, here we go.
Uh-oh.
All right, man. I'll see you later. Cheers.
Cheers.
There you have it. Boy, am I in big trouble. Listen, it's that kind of a party. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Yes. And anything goes. We are sponsored by New York Hardcore Comics, the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Mad Vintage, and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them and ramp up your game at www.126clothing.com. Let's make sure everybody's okay. Yeah, I am crazy. I probably just signed my death warrant by doing that. Right. That said, I'm counting on you to keep your mouth shut about this. All right, here we go. Let's bring our guest on. Let's have some fun. I got a good feeling about today's show too. I'm excited. It's like I'm doing another one of these. I'm calling the shot like Babe Ruth. It's gonna be one of those things. Today's guest is a musician turned award-winning author hailing from Birmingham, England. As an author, he's known for his literary works, Isle of Noises, Great British Songwriters, Don't Look Back in Anger, The Rise and Fall of Cool Britannia, Walls Come Tumbling Down, The Music and Politics of Rock Against Racism, and his latest venture, Too Much Too Soon, the two-tone record story. Please welcome, coming at us from North London, Mr. Daniel Rachel. Hey, man.
Hey, Drew.
Hi, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
I'm really excited you're here, man.
That's quite an introduction. Wow. We don't have radio like this in London.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
We're on it.
well, welcome to New York City, man.
Hey, cool.
Are you excited? I mean, we're just gonna go wherever we want today, right? Are you? You know, I must say, and I'm just gonna jump right in with this. Are you excited about coming to the States and doing your book tour?
You can't believe how excited I am. I've been to New York, and that's my whole experience of the US. So everything else I know about. I mean, all these dates, they're just picking out names from songs that I know. You know, I can't.
Yeah.
And places that we're going in 3.5 weeks. Yeah, I can't wait.
And you're kicking it off in West Hollywood at Book Soup, which is a legendary place. Then you're doing all the great bookstores. You're doing City Lights in San Francisco, Vegas, Tempe, Denver, Chicago, Cleveland, upstate New York, Jersey City. And then you're coming here to Rough Trade, which I'm moderating. Then DC, man, you're doing it, man. A fellow Londoner. Where are you in London?
I'm up the Piccadilly line.
Okay. All right. Good.
You can go that way or that way. Northern Line, Piccadilly line,
and
then meet in the middle somewhere. No man's land.
So let's start. Let's bounce the ball back and forth a little bit. Let's have some fun with it.
All right.
Let's do a little. Let's do a couple minutes, a little bit of your personal background, and then let's make our way to the book, because there's a lot to talk about with the book. But yeah, how did you come up? Did you grow up in a musical household? How did music come into your life?
There was a reel-to-reel in the house, 1/4-inch tape. And I had it, and when I fed the tape through, it was the 1970 BBC Radio 1 Story of the Beatles. And I must have been about 8 years old. And as the tape started to go around, I just heard all these 4 Liverpool voices all making each other laugh. And it was just like, wow. And then the music kicked in, and it was stuff like Please Please Me and She Loves You and From Me to You. And I was hooked. You know, I wanted to be in the club. I wanted to be part of the Fab Four. And there was this documentary, was about 8 hours long, you know, slow speed reel to reel. That's kind of one of my first music memories, really. And then listening to records by Buddy Holly and a rock and roll compilation album, like Safaris was on it, you know, like the drum roll, you know, and then yeah, so that was me getting into music, I guess.
And you grew up in Birmingham?
Yeah. Which is 100 miles north from London.
Isn't Black Sabbath from Birmingham?
My dad went to school with Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi. He said Tony Iommi was all right, and Ozzy was bad news. He used to stand on street corners, cause trouble. I think my dad was a bit safe.
Yeah. So
Black Sabbath, and you know, Zeppelin were just up the road. So when I started getting in bands, we'd play at venues that Zeppelin had started out at. The Move were from Birmingham. Spencer Davis Group. You know, we had a rich heritage of largely rock. Actually, Birmingham was not my thing.
So it was a vibrant. So growing up as a child in Birmingham, music was just in the air. It was a vibrant place.
Well, no, not really, because I was in a kind of a suburb up to my teenage years, 8 miles out of the city centre. and where we were, it was just full of old people with UB40. Yeah. I ended up in Moseley in my 20s, which is the home of UB40 and the Au Pairs. And but Solihull, no, I mean it was the pub that me and my friends went to, the only half decent pub that wasn't shirt and tie.
Sure.
Didn't play music. It was weird. Wow. But the great side of that is you just chat and talk with your friends around a table for hours on end, you know.
After the Beatles, who really spoke to you musically? Who did you feel connected to?
Well, I've always been connected to the Beatles, but then when I went to school, then the Specials, Madness hit me, Two-Tone hit me, and simultaneously, oddly enough, with Adam and the Ants, and now that doesn't make sense to me. They're so opposite as a thing, but you know, I'm just a young kid, 8, 9, 10, and it's not music. Just is whatever you hear, isn't it? And if you like, so I loved the tribal drums on Kings of the Wild Frontier,
sure.
You know, and then I went back onto their first album, Dirt Wears White Socks. That was great. And at the same time, I was hearing Too Much Too Young and early, you know, Madness songs. And so, yeah, they became big loves about that time. I started dressing as a rude boy.
You know, one thing that I learned, I'm working on a book project. It's 1970s. A family friend gifted me 3,500 negatives from 1977 London, and wow. It's yeah. We've talked about it on the show many times. Incredible photos, and a lot of the early Adam and the Ants photos. And there's one thing I learned is that Adam and the Ants was, and they weren't really Adam and the Ants then. They were really the Ants or whatever. They were a beloved act early on. They had like a following, a move. People loved that band.
Yeah, I remember reading about them, and you know, they sometimes got kicked out of venues, and Adam would march all of the audience down to the next nearest pub, and he would describe in the book several hundred people marching down, and he's got like a kabuki face on at times and black eye makeup. And then Jordan, who worked in the sex shop with Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood, she sang a couple of songs, then she became the Ants manager. And you know, they were doing, I mean, I think what I found fascinating about Adam Ant's songwriting at that time was that he was very historical in his reference points, you know, talking about Futurist Manifesto and or JFK and the shooting, and lots of references to things that I wouldn't have known at that age, but they were things that I was going to learn about in later life, and about that's the thing Adam Ant would talk about. And then this kind of strange sexuality, which to a young boy was really kind of out there, you know. But yeah, I stuck with Adam and the Ants for a long time, you know, more than
Let me show you something. This is
there you go. Wow.
This is the latest draft of the book.
What
right?
Book?
This of the book that we're putting out soon.
Oh,
and so I'm just I'm scrolling through here the book, right? So there's these are never before seen shots.
Who's the photographer, Drew?
Yeah. Who
is it?
This is an interesting story. This is a guy. My dad was a film director, my father. Okay. And this guy was
Oliver.
No, Arnie. This guy was my father's cameraman, but he was younger than my father. So we became friends, and I saw these pictures in the 80s. Then when we started doing the music videos, he was the cameraman when I did the music videos. Wow. And I always asked him about these photos. And many years later, he said, "I'm going to give them to you as a gift to your family for so much." And he gave me these 3,500 negatives at the Slits, the Slits 999. And the book is designed, and it's going to the printer pretty soon. Johnny from Akashic is helping me with some advice, but I want to show you.
This looks magnificent. Wow.
Well, this one's interesting because I made a note of this in the book. This is the Killjoys.
Kevin Rowland.
That's right. This is the Killjoys who we're going to speak about because the early Dexys Midnight Runners did the two-tone tour. Yeah.
And you would never know when you hear the Killjoys, because I've seen
That's
a
right.
video of Killjoys in '78 that a year later he'd be doing Northern Soul songs. Oh, there's the answer.
Yeah. So here's
brilliant. Have you got the jam?
Don't have the jam.
Pistols, Clash, Buzzcocks.
Nope. I got this one. Whoa.
Generation X at King's College.
Yeah.
November 14th, 77. Billy Idol.
Look how beautiful these shots are.
What's his T-shirt? Is it Eddie Cochran?
Eddie Cochran. Yeah, it's Eddie Cochran.
Look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and
wow.
here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So so there's this great private photo session he did. Look at these early.
This is the one before. Dave Barbarossa, the drummer.
That's right.
I had a drink with him the other night.
That's right. And the guy on the right, I forgot his name. He's in monochrome set.
Yeah, Andy Warren.
That's right.
And Dave Barr went up in
that's how beautiful, right?
Adam's always so beautiful. And Jordan, I met about 3 or 4 years ago, and she was chatting, and then she just kissed me on the lips. It was like, wow.
Squeeze. That way, I just want to show you one. I want to show you one of. Look at these. Look at this.
Look at Don Letts with Harry Up.
That's right.
Johnny Rotten's
daughter-in-law.
Yeah, daughter-in-law. Who would have thought? She's about 15, 16 here.
Yeah.
And
anyway,
Don got a great film.
Derek Jarman.
Wow. Look at him with the old telephone.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic troupe.
Anyway, sorry to sidetrack things.
No, not at all. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So, yeah.
See, as a kid, as soon as you hear the Pistols and the Buzzcocks, and you start going back, don't you?
Yeah.
And I was a bit too young for 77, 78.
Yep.
But at a point in the 80s, I went back into it. And I always liked the punk bands that have been influenced by mod and kind of early 70s music. And I wasn't such a fan of punk groups that were influenced by punk groups because they didn't seem to have that deeper, like the Pistols are just speeded up kind of mod band, weren't they, in many respects, with Johnny Rotten on top as the ingredient you didn't understand.
What Greg, the photographer, told me is the reason that there's no pistol shots, is that they didn't play that much. They did not play often, and it got to a point very quickly where they couldn't. No place would let them play.
Well, if that's November 77, then they've just tried to do the Spots tour, which is Sex Pistols on tour secretly because they're banned. And so they go out under this pseudonym, and even those gigs, some happen, some don't happen. And then, of course, just as we turn into 78, they come to the States, don't they? So maybe
was that the tour they did with Johnny Thunder and the Heartbreakers and the Clash, or that was before?
That's 77, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, early. Well, these are 77, but that's earlier, I think, or even 76 off the reality tour, late 76, early 77.
Well, there you go. I might have to reach out to you to get a couple words on for the book.
I think it just looks beautiful. Yeah. And if Johnny's doing Akashic, it's going to be great.
Johnny's giving it a look, and he's gonna make. So keep moving. You end up as a musician, correct?
Yeah.
How did that come together? And why early on a performer?
Because I got a guitar, I learned how to play guitar, and then I wanted to at 16 join a band, and I made a phone call, and it turned out that the phone call I was making was going 3 doors down the road, and I didn't know, and it was my neighbor who was 4 years older than me. So he picks up the phone, and I'm going, "Hi, I'm just answering the advert," and he very quickly sussed out who I was, and he's going, "You're Daniel, aren't you?" "Yeah." "Daniel Rachel?" "Yeah." "And you live on Warwick Road, don't you?" I was going, "Yeah." And he was telling me the number of my house. He's going, "And your brother is called this," and he started telling me all this personal stuff, and then of course, so we met up and we became best friends, and we got in a band. He ended up being pretty well known here in a band called Ocean Colour Scene. I don't think they were big in the States. They came and did a big tour with Catherine Wheel and House of Love in about 91. 92, when a lot of the British bands came over. Blur came, didn't they? And
Sure.
so he went on selling 1 million plus records, and I went my way. And then I eventually in the 90s got in a band called Rachel's Basement, and that kind of didn't go enough places. And then in the 2000s, I did a couple of solo records, and that was kind of more of a grassroots, releasing some vinyls and singles. And then by the time we got towards the end of the 2000s, the dream hadn't happened, you know, and I was like, you know, I can't be 40 going, I've got a new song. Oh, flipping hell!
There you are. Look, you know, look how young and vibrant this band looked, you know. But yeah, so this is Rachel's Basement, and like you said, you guys gave it a good run. According to my homework, singer-songwriter of Birmingham band Rachel's Basement. Although the four-piece remained unsigned, Rachel's Basement played to sold-out venues and rave reviews, undertaking several nationwide headline and support tours. Courted on many occasions by the record industry, including prestigious residencies at UB40's DEP Studios and Rockfield Studios. The band's time simply was not then. What I mean, in retrospect, had to have been just a great experience.
Well, it was a life. That's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, you know, I did nothing else in my life except write songs all day, rehearse all day, and do gigs, and that served me in Rachel's Basement for most of my 20s. And we had a great time, and it was like we wrote the first few chapters of the memoir, you know, the bit that everybody loves, you know, in the back of a tour bus and doing this and doing that, and all the great stories. And then, you know, chapter 7, when you know they make the first record and all that, that's where it sadly ended. And there was a version before, and we were just about to do it, and then all 3 of them sacked me. So the photograph you saw there was the second version. And you know what it's like when you try and form a band, and it takes forever to try and get the chemistry, but it worked again, and then it all went wrong again. So, but it doesn't matter. It was all going, give me a life of some sort or other.
Yeah, and I have to say from experience that doing something like that, and even in my case, being in the High and the Mighty and Antidote, it was an incredible education as far as learning experience, as far as how the music business works, what the pieces were. It gave me some real understanding and perspective to who's who, what's what, how things work, the dynamics of being in a band, of touring, how record companies work. I mean, the experience, right? I mean, I'm assuming for you the same.
Well, yeah, because I ended up setting up a little record label in the 2000s. So that all that kind of stuff, I guess.
Is that Dust Records?
Yeah. But I'd listened to The Who when I was young, and I love that lyric, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And the minute I heard that as a teenager, I thought, I'm never getting a job. But I understood what Pete Townsend meant by that it was all the same, and it was going to be, if you're going to be working for a living, it's going to be awful. I just went for the option of no money, sign on the dole, and just get a guitar in your hand and a microphone to sing down, and that would do me. And you know, I'm not, I can't, it's not worth, you know, I find it, I don't often talk about Rachel's Basement because it meant everything to me, and now it's like that chapter closed and this new chapter opened, and I'm immensely proud of what I did for myself, but it means nothing to anybody except me, really, and maybe the members of the band.
I can really relate to that, honestly. Having been in bands, and I really, oops, I'm sorry. I really understand that. How did things go from sort of being a musician and trying to make it, and then sort of getting into the literary world?
Well, I'd got these last 2 singles that came out in the latter part of the 2000s, and they were getting airplay, you know, national airplay. I was getting meetings and write-ups, and I thought, this is it, the final thing now. And then this one song didn't, what was promised didn't happen. And I'd had this thought about 7 or 8 years earlier, where, you know, you remember you had Borders bookshop. Borders came to the UK, and I went into Borders and I bought a book called Songwriters on Songwriting by Paul Zollo, and it had all the American greats in it, Dylan and Neil Young and Paul Simon, everybody. And I bought it and I thought, this is magnificent. I went back to Borders and I said, can I have the English version, please? And they said, there isn't one. I went, and then so when these two singles didn't work, I thought, I'm going to write that book. I'm going to write the English version of it. I'm going to meet all the great British writers of the last 50 years and see if I can write a book. And it took me, and so I guillotined my music career. I put my loud and acoustic, my Fender Telecaster into their cases and locked them away and just told everybody I was going to be an author without any notion whatsoever of what that meant or how you did it or who you spoke to or nothing. I just thought, if I shout it loud and I fail, then I'll be a total embarrassment. So I've got to make it work.
You've come to the right place. We have a great appreciation. It's sort of, you know, we talk about a lot about, you know, in hardcore, you know, it's the DIY ethos, the kind of do it yourself sort of, you know, we're not going to get, you know, we're not waiting to get signed. We're going to book our own shows. We're going to make our own flyers. And it's in the spirit of that. Is this the first book project?
Yes. This is the hardback version of the English cover. So that the names you can barely see are embossed, you know, so they're you know, you can put your finger over them and feel the dents. And the paperback, you can see it more clearly. But yeah, they're all the people that each one of those songwriters, if you could, people can read it. It was a chapter in the book. I did an introduction to set them up as writers, and then there was a conversation with me and Ray Davies or me and whoever, you know. And the idea was to a linear line of British songwriters from Ray to the present day.
And did you meet in person and interview everybody?
Yeah, when I met everybody, that was I refused. I had to sit in front of them and meet them. So meeting Johnny Rotten, that was just so exciting.
I could relate. I interviewed Johnny when I did the Ilago film. He was fantastic. And wow, you know, some of the, I mean, a lot of the greats, Mick Jones, big one in my world, Paul Weller.
I met Mick in a pub in Notting Hill. And he originally said to me when he was agreeing to do it, he wanted to be the last person in the book. When everybody else is doing it, I'll do it. How did it get Jimmy Page? Jimmy Page is really hard, and because I was like nobody, and I'd phone up a record company and say, "Can I speak to the world famous Jimmy Page?" Who are you? Daniel Rachel. Phone goes down. So it became trying to find ways to go round the back. And I think ultimately Jimmy Page did it because I met Brian Ferry, and whoever was managing Brian put a word in. And this was like 3 years after trying. But I remember when I was in a room like this and I heard Jimmy outside, and he said to somebody, "Am I doing the right thing?" And I think he was referring to coming in. And he walked in and he was dressed in black and his hair was slicked. And I just said, "Wow, you look really cool." And he went, "Thanks." And then there was everybody I met, I'd laid out a table with records, not to show off, but so that when we talked about songwriting, they might pick up an album and go, well, this song is about what you're talking about.
Sure.
But Jimmy honed in and picked up a cassette and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "It's a bootleg I want to ask you about. It's outtakes of Zeppelin around 1970, 71. And he said to me, "You know, this was stolen from my house." He said, "That's why this is now available. Somebody broke in that time and stole my rehearsal stuff." And I said, "That's why you now own it." And I said, and I didn't know, so I said, really embarrassed. But what I remember was, and what I talked to Jimmy about was, on the end of the cassette was this kind of thing he'd been playing on the guitar, and then as he was jamming on to himself in his house, it went into the lick of Kashmir.
Ooh.
And it's like, well, out of nothing comes Kashmir. And
Mm,
so I asked him, is that how you wrote, on an
sure.
acoustic? And you just play and then something happens. And so he embellished that story. And it was like, wow, this is just so exciting.
Did Pat Baldwin asks, did being a musician help them not view you as just another music journalist?
Well, I pride myself on not being a journalist because I'm sure, like you may think, Drew, I mean, I think musicians are very suspicious of journalists, particularly if they're writing to order or, an editor wants them to go and get somebody. All I was a musician. And of course, the one thing I never asked any musician is what comes first, the music or the words. And
Sure.
I could, because I've been trying to write songs for the past 20 years myself, not that I ever mentioned to anybody that I'd ever tried to write a song, but I could phrase a question in a certain way because perhaps I understood the creative dynamics and the perhaps how you unlock melody or where melodies come from, and when you have a melodic idea, how do you make it grow? And I mean, one of the greatest compliments Robin Gibb said to me at the end of the conversation, I went to this deconsecrated church that he lives in Oxfordshire, which is about 60 miles north from London. And he just said to me at the end, you asked me things that nobody's asked me in 40 years. It's like, wow. And he'd made me biscuits.
and talk about an incredible songwriter, whew.
Do you know, Drew, the Bee Gees, Robin told me this mad thing. He said that they work out on a keyboard the melody of a song, and they work it exactly what that melody is. And he said, because melody is king, says Robin. And he said, when you write the words, whatever your magnificent sentence is, if it doesn't fit precisely the melody you've decided, you change the words. And then you think of a songwriter like Jarvis Cocker or Dylan or and the melody fits the words. Bee Gees the exact opposite.
Yeah, they were an incredible and also, of course, three siblings. And when they sang together, it was I think it was mesmerizing. To hear those three voices, the way that the three brothers sang together was
unbelievable.
Incredible.
Like Jive Talking, Nights on Broadway, and all that early 60s stuff.
And you know what? I'm gonna use that as a segue to another book that you did. And I know I'm skipping around here, but on the subject of sort of siblings in bands together, you wrote the Oasis Nebworth book.
Yeah.
And any perspective on this? I happen to be a big Oasis lover, fan myself.
Oh, right. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, this is all about Jill Furmanovsky, who is the photographer and had a relationship with Oasis from almost the beginning. And so I went to Jill and just said, I think Nebworth is one of the defining cultural moments of the 90s in the UK, where perhaps we could do a book and celebrate it. What do you have? And she said, I don't know. I mean, I did a few pictures at the time and then everything gets locked away in my cabinet. And so she said, come and have a look. And we opened the cabinet. Of course, all these kind of unseen photographs, like you were just showing a 77 fall out. And I'd seen Oasis in my local pub in Birmingham, first in December 1993, and then in March 1994, supporting another band. And so I saw them many, many times really early on. And every time I saw them, it was like a nought was added to the audience. So from like 100, it went to 1,000, then 1,000, it went to 10,000, then it went to 100,000. And this day at Nebworth was just incredible. And so it was really, and I spoke to Noel Gallagher, and so Noel gives all his insights and memories of that event. And it's beautiful when you open it, very beautiful.
I'm a big fan of that band. I personally, I feel like they could be the last really. They define an era and speak to me. They're the last great real rock and roll band of that had the whole package, but before the industry changed, and before everything changed, they were the last, rock star, superstar outfit. And I think
you wouldn't have the Strokes for that.
Yeah, yeah, right. True. And just to throw this in the mix, you also did a book touching on your love for the Beatles, right?
Yeah, and then it got renamed over here as I haven't got a copy. It's paperback as the Lost Beatles album. The hardback, it was very strange. The hardback bombed, and then it got republished with a different title as a paperback, and then it just suddenly went, and it got some great reviews, and then then it just had the life of a book. But it's a somebody saw Noel playing Central Park.
Me, I did with Lou. We went here, which is walking distance from where I live. We saw him play Central Park last year.
Really?
It was great.
Flying Birds.
Yes.
What are your big Oasis songs?
I love the whole catalog. No, I do, and I came in late in the game. Really, I discovered them fairly recently in the last couple of years, and just I really did, and delved into their delved into their entire catalog, and was just blown away by it. Really, right. I mean, really was, and sure, I knew of sort of the Wonderwall, the usual suspects, but going deep into their catalog, and I also feel like Liam Gallagher's voice, he just has I think his voice is incredible.
Well, Wonderwall's a great example of that, because it's a ballad song, and he really attacks the vocal, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And and in the video, he's sitting in a chair. You know, what rock stars sit in a chair? That's what George Harrison was doing in the 80s. And there's Liam delivering Wonderwall, and he's just got this tough vocal, but also it's got a melancholy within it, and it, that just Wonderwall, he sings magnificently. I mean, that's you could pick about 50 songs, couldn't you? But yeah, great frontman.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Let's jump ahead, because there's other books, and I got to get to this because I'm excited about talking about this book. And what led up to you going with this subject matter? Could you set the table a little bit? Basically, why now? What led up to it?
I mean, as I said, as a kid, I'd been massively into two-tone. It had had a really profound effect on me when it swept the school playground, and I just stayed with the music thereafter, and I always have done, and it's been a big passion of mine. And I think even 10 years ago, I saw Jerry Dammer's name was DJing on the side of the Thames in London, and I wrote him a letter, and I went down and I introduced myself. He was DJing, and I said I'd really like to write a book on two-tone, and I gave him my letter, and he pocketed the letter, which I was really pleased about. But then he just said, "Oh, everybody just wants to talk about the past," and then I never heard anything. So I've always wanted to do something, and then there was no real reason timing-wise, except that I got to know Jerry a little bit because of a book I'd written called Walls Come Tumbling Down. And so I think I phoned him and I said, I'd really like to write a comprehensive, thorough book of the story of the label, and I need your permission. Can I do it?
So you wrote Walls Come Tumbling Down, The Music and Politics of Rock Against Racism, Two-Tone, and Red Wedge. So you sort of touched on the subject matter. You danced around it peripherally a little bit. So in a way, it was right there. It was familiar territory. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, Wars Come Tumbling Down. The two-tone section, as the title suggests, is literally the politics of two-tone, and it's a smaller segment within the book. And I remember as I was writing that, I mean, I was trying to shoe it in there because I was such a big fan, but I was frustrated because I knew the story wasn't that, it was that, you know. And but you know, you to understand why two-tone comes into existence, why the specials are formed by Jerry Dammers, then you have to understand Rock Against Racism, because it's born out, two-tone is born out of Rock Against Racism. In as much as Jerry Dammers formed the specials, Jerry Dammers formed the label two-tone.
That's right.
And when he went to see Rock Against Racism gigs, and a Rock Against Racism gig was invariably a black band playing, which would be black musicians reggae, white musicians punk, and then at the end of the night, the two sets of musicians would do what was called the jam, and they would come on stage and jam. And Jerry thought, well, that's a great political statement, but what about having black and white musicians in one band together? And today, that sounds like, well, you know, everybody does it. It's not a great thing. But in 1978, it was an incredible thing to try and do.
And all this, the origin of all this was Coventry, which, you know, reading the book and doing a little bit of research, Coventry was an interesting place for this movement to come out of. In a lot of ways, Coventry was like the British Detroit, right? It was known for the auto industry, and it was basically a musical desert, right? And it was like basically leveled in World War II, correct?
Yeah. It was I think Goebbels invented a word, Coventryate, which is to you know, obliterate, raise it to the ground. The Coventry was massively destroyed. Many thousands of lives were lost. The King of England made a visit to Coventry, and you know what I love about what you're mentioning about Detroit and Motown is the parallel it has to two-tone. And I open the book with this kind of history, in that Coventry needed to be revived, and it got revived by the car industry, by Jaguar and Daimler. Sure. And it got its revival, and until the latter part of the 60s, early 70s, where it went into recession. So Coventry needed renewal again. And that renewal this time came from culture. And the culture was music. It was the two-tone movement, which revived not only Coventry, but it would revive a country. And then what's incredible is that Jerry Dammers imagined a sound of two-tone, which would be like a car factory plant, where if a car came out of Detroit, everyone would be the same. And he wanted records to come out of Coventry where you would know the introduction straight away and go, that's a two-tone song. And so it's a story of revival, and that's really exciting.
And I guess looking underneath, like we said, similar to Detroit, the audio industry just brought together so many ethnicities. It was a real melting pot of black, Pakistani, white, this, that, whatever. The Indian. There was a real melting pot existed there, which created all the elements for something like this to happen in a very unlikely place like Coventry.
Well, after the Second World War, Britain needed rebuilding, and the government invited the Empire, the members of the Empire, British citizens, come back to the motherland, which is what Caribbean island folk would call the UK, and come and work. And of course, when they came in on boats like the Windrush in the late 40s and into the 50s, so they came and worked, and naturally they would either bring their families across or they would make home in the UK. And then the first generation, second generation of those kids are the kids of the mid 70s, late 70s. And those black kids would go to the same schools as white kids, would go to the same youth clubs as white kids. And the white kids would be hearing all this Caribbean island music and seeing the clothes. And the black kids were listening to the Stones and the Small Faces and the Who and the Beatles. And then, so naturally, when these kids picked up guitars, the influence was of both. And that's why you get this punky reggae mix of mid-70s Britain. And that's what leads into a two-tone sound. And as you rightly say, it was already happening in the workplace, in Coventry, in Birmingham, in the industrial cities. And so Coventry and Birmingham, I mean, they're only 15 miles apart. Both cities had exactly the same experience.
Yeah, I just as a note, being a little bit of a World War II sort of buff myself, I found it really interesting that Coventry and Dresden sort of adopted each other as sort of twin cities or sister cities, and Dresden was leveled, in World War II infamously, as was Coventry. I found it very interesting that not too many years later, these two cities sort of, became sister cities. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, and the German kids came over to Coventry from school and helped rebuild the cathedral to clear it, and that's amazing. It's like a similar thing, in the way that Hamburg was flattened by the British, and then the Beatles went over to Hamburg, and John Lennon got up on stage in the Reeperbahn and would be Sieg Heiling and doing his Stormtrooper act, in front of the people that had seen their city obliterated by the Allied forces.
And there's that whole sort of controversial history of Bomber Harris and the RAF. Did they really need to level a cultural, beautiful city like Dresden the way that it was, the way they did in such a horrific manner? That history looks back on that, but that's what.
I've just been watching the documentary from the States, The War.
Ken Burns. Ken Burns.
I mean, what a filmmaker! He's got to be one of your best documentary makers in the country for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love his work. I've watched The War probably 3 or 4 times. I love the multi-series thing he did on the Vietnam War.
That's amazing.
Incredibly informative. He really lays it out in terms, growing up here in America, I never really understood the Vietnam War. I didn't understand the elements, how, why, and that documentary is the most informative documentary on that subject matter I've ever seen.
And the fact that he was prepared to have people from all sides tell the story. So it's not, he's very good at that, isn't he? He doesn't put it to just one particular grouping. You get the kind of the 360 sphere of the story he's telling,
Sure. Yes, Ray Hogan. The baseball the baseball series and the jazz series he did were incredible as well.
I don't know the baseball one.
Well, he also just did the Muhammad Ali doc, and my family licensed him. We licensed him a bunch of footage from the documentary my father made in the 70s. We licensed Ken Burns a bunch of footage for his Muhammad Ali documentary, which
is the Muhammad Ali one your dad did.
Yeah, he did a documentary in the 70s called Me We. It's on we put it on YouTube for free. And this is another story, but to make in a nutshell, we decided to put it up on YouTube for free in the spirit of independent filmmaking. It's a 30-minute film. When we restored it, we did the nice rounds, we did the Boxing Hall of Fame and all that. We decided to put it up on YouTube for free. And of course, the moral of the story was probably 10 different people have approached us about licensing footage, including Ken Burns. So in the end, it was a great thing to do. And, from time to time, we licensed footage of it, and it's just great. Is it?
Yeah, that's magnificent. You did that, really great. Yeah. And the other great thing that Ken Burns was US and the Holocaust. I mean, another magnificent piece of work.
Yep. Look, they're coming in fast and furious. The Civil War documentary was amazing.
I need to see that. It's hard to see these things in the UK. We just got PSP America, I've only just picked up on it recently. It's a great channel.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jeffrey Dahmer's, and is it Dahmer's or Dammers? Am I pronouncing it?
Jerry Dammers, yeah.
Dammers. So
Dammers.
Coming out of Coventry, originally he formed the Automatics event, right? And then eventually, is it safe to say that he was a visionary in some regard?
I think he was a musical visionary, because the concept of, firstly, a label that would be a platform for other bands to come and record one song on a 7-inch single, 2 songs, and then they're free to go and do what he wants to do. He's going to sign this idea in a package when his band gets signed. You don't get one unless you get both. And then also Jerry's he's an art school student. He was a filmmaker. So he will go on to storyboard many of the videos, the specials and the special AKA. And he'll come up with the costume, the look of the rude boy for a modern. I mean, a rude boy comes from mid-60s Jamaica, but he was reintroducing the rude boy to fit into what was happening culturally in late 70s Britain. And he had all these ideas of how everything could work. Yeah. And I think the most amazing thing about it all is he's successful. Yeah. You know? Yeah, and all his ideas came to fruition, and that's quite something.
So early on, he pulls the specials together, which is an incredibly eclectic group. Terry Hall, who was I think coming from a bit of a punk background, and he just brought together these really different personalities. And like you mentioned before, I'm assuming that at the time, when in I guess 79, when the specials started getting out there early on, this was unheard of to have black kids and white kids on stage doing this sort of thing, correct?
Yeah, Jerry purposely chose it. I mean, you were probably ahead of the game of, Sly and the Family Stone.
Sure.
I mean, we had a band called the Equals, Eddie Grant.
Yep.
There was the odd outlier, and there were bands with maybe one black member, but to bring it together around a set of lyrics that were talking about race, about different nationalities coming together, about racism, talking about black and white uniting, and to dress it all up with the look of it. That was something incredibly different. And then to discover that other bands, I mean, you just look at the picture of that front cover. I mean, the 2 black guys are actually from Jamaica, and they've come over. Terry was in a punk band. Roddy was in a Heartbreakers kind of rock and roll band. Horace was in had been in a soul, kind of more disco funk kind of outfit. And Brad, the drummer, had been in soul bands, northern soul bands. So musically, they're really different. To look at, they're very different. And then you've got this thing that is very unique to two-tone bands of 2 lead singers.
Yeah.
So you've got Terry and Neville. And as we will learn from the other two-tone bands, they all have 2 lead singers. Yeah. And I don't think that had really been a thing since perhaps Lennon and McCartney, and I think that was an amazing thing. But Jerry told me, if people here are fans of the specials, there's 7 deliberate mistakes on that front cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me see. Let's see. Deliberate mistakes. What could be a mistake?
Jerry loves, nothing is perfect in the world of Jerry Dammers intentionally.
Right. What are they? Could you point them out?
I'll point 2 or 3 for you. So the first one is that there's a chip here on the C.
On the C?
I don't know if it's an original copy. It's chipped out underneath here. That's done intentionally because the photographer is Chalky and Carroll.
I see.
A little reference to them. None of the wording is straight. It's kind of at odd angles. Mm-hmm. And then Jerry cut out every member of the band and then photocopied them on top again. So you get this kind of imperfect and then cutting around, and they're all little things like that are all wrong. And it's just his artistic vision,
I think going back a little bit, which basically harkens to the first two-tone release. I know he was inspired by the Buzzcocks Spiral Scratch EP, which the Buzzcocks, basically DIY style, went and recorded themselves and put out this EP by themselves, and that inspired him and to get the Specials into the studio and do the first single, right, which was
Gangsters.
I know Gangsters with Selector on the with the Selector on the other. But what was interesting, I thought, was that he recorded, printed, basically, and brought it to Rough Trade in London, right? And I love the connection, because you and I are doing this live event at Rough Trade in New York City in a couple of weeks. I thought that was kind of great. But so they go to Rough Trade with this. Rough Trade loved it and paid them up front initially for this single, which was really just sort of in the sleeve and sort of just with a rubber stamp on it, real basic. But they sold 2,000, then 5,000, then 10,000, then 20,000, and things just took off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and for the whole book, I met maybe 100 people, and one of those was Jeff Travis, just who set up Rough Trade, and that model that if somebody turns up and says, I've got a cassette, I've got an album, and he plays it there and then, he says, I like it, let's do something with it. That's what happened with the Specials. Right. And Jeff says in the book that he really wishes that he'd been able to stay with the Specials, but he said that it was just about a year too soon. And of course they would do it with Stiff Little Fingers and the album Inflammable Material. But as it was, he couldn't hold on to them, and they do a marketing distribution deal with Chrysalis. But for that time, you're exactly right, that they were just hand stamped records that the Specials all got on their hands and knees in a flat in Coventry, and they were all just stamping it one by one. And those they flew out the record shop. And I think Gangsters is the first record possibly with sampling on it, because people know Gangsters, it's got that screech, and that's taken off Prince Buster's version of Al Capone, and that's a sample. You
mentioned Chrysalis, and basically for those out there that may not know, the Specials sort of they put out their own first single. It's self-financed. Rough Trade prints it up again and again, and then of course the Specials live were incredible. And I think there was a little bit of a bidding war for the Specials, a couple of, but Chrysalis and me just looking at it, just this incredible deal where not only does Chrysalis sign the band the Specials, but they sign Two Tone Records, the imprint Two Tone Records, to put out singles sort of sight unseen. I've never heard of such a deal. Could you explain that configuration?
Yeah, of course. And everybody wanted to sign the Specials. Mick Jagger came down to a gig in London, a small place, a couple of hundred people, and he wanted to sign the Specials to Rolling Stones records. But there always was this thing that Jerry was saying: you sign Two-Tone Records, not just the Specials. And so exactly that. Jerry said, I will bring you up to 10 bands each year, and you have to commit to putting 6 of those bands out. And they don't have to sign a record deal. It's just a platform for them to do what they need to do. And of course, Chrysalis said, who are the other bands? And Jerry said, I have no idea. And they're
incredible.
They're so desperate to get the Specials, they agree to it. I think, from the research I've done for the book, I think that they took a hit on the advance, because the Specials were signed for 20,000. Now, to put that in perspective, the Clash signed for 80,000. The Pistols got 100,000 plus. Wow. So there's a hit going on there. But Jerry said, I wanted to be a pop star, but not in terms of the biggest deal in the country, which is what does happen. He thought it would still be fairly underground. So they're pretty thrilled that they get the deal.
And I must say, just learning about Jerry in the book, money wasn't a big motivator for him. It wasn't about let's get the most money. It was really about let's get the most artistic freedom and let's execute our vision.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that, because otherwise you would tie a band to a contract. If the song's a hit, you do another record with us, then you do an album. There was none of that. And then, of course, subsequently, when the band start turning on Jerry in later years for when they want to get in a limousine or they want to go in the nicest hotels, he's saying to them, look, this is all stuff that we end up paying for. He understood that record companies say, yeah, we'll provide the car, but you're as the musician. And he's going, no, if you want to buy a car or you want to own your own house, now is the time to save your money. But I think this speaks to a greater story, which is the class system in Britain and class differences. And it's integral to understanding the two-tone story. So Jerry is middle class. Various members of the Specials are working class. If you've had nothing as a working class kid, your toilets outside your house, that kind of thing, then the idea of getting in a limousine or a posh hotel is like, wow. Maybe a middle class kid perhaps will go, no, we don't need those kind of trappings. And so that's one of the things that begins to brew amongst the band when they first come over to the States in early spring of 1980.
Yeah. And we'll get to that a little bit, because that's sort of when the cracks start to show after that US tour that was extremely stressful. Somebody I have to mention, I'd be amiss, and somebody mentions it in the comments. Let me find this comment. It was great. Oh, okay. That first record, and I want to mention it because Elvis Costello produced it, but I want to mention this guy here, because just in doing my homework, it seemed like when this guy joined the band, it really went to the next level. And this is Rico Rodriguez. And when Pat Baldwin mentions they added Rico Rodriguez to direct lineage to the original ska groups. Could you tell us a little bit about who he is and how he plays into this?
Yeah, the little Chinese man with the hat is how guitarist Roddy Radiation describes him, because of his kind of mixed heritage himself, not partly Jamaican. And he played on many of the original ska records. He went to the Alpha Boys School, which was the breeding ground as kids for all the great musicians of the Scatolites. And then he would play on original tracks by Prince Buster and a variety of different musicians. And by the time he'd come to England and done a couple of solo albums in the mid-70s, he could be found in clubs doing his own gigs, beginning to he played on a members track. And Jerry heard he was in town and was too scared to go and call for him. So he got guitarist Limbaugh to go and knock on his door. And, he agreed to come and play on the album, on Message to You, Rudy, which he originally played on. And then he joins the band with a cornet player, Dick Cathell. And they immediately go on equal wages, become the 8th and 9th members of the Specials. And Rico plays with the Specials all the way through to the final North America tour in 1981 and does the famous extended Ghost Town, the trombone solo for 3 extra minutes, and he's there all the way through it. And he's got a very he's got a beautiful tone, and you can always tell it's Rico. There's a certain way lips. Yeah, you hear it's him. It's different to Don Drummond, the original Scatolites player. You can hear Rico's tone, and it's wonderful. And then in the beat there was Saxa, also from Jamaica, a really old guy by comparison. I mean, the beat had a 16-year-old Rankin Roger, and on the other extreme, Saxa, who could have been his granddad easily, and plus, and to have these Jamaican musicians playing with Terry Hall, an upstart punk from Coventry, and these white kids who are trying to play Caribbean music, gives it a really important stamp to say, you know, here's one of the originals and he likes what you're doing. It gives it gravitas and importance. And the same with Saxa and the Beat.
Fantastic. I have to ask, did you see any of these groups in this era early on? Did you see them, what seemingly incredible live shows?
Yeah, no, I mean, originally I was seeing it on TV, on the radio, and they showed some early specials concerts on television. And then the first bands I saw were UB40 and Madness a little bit later. So, you know, when I first heard the specials, I would have been 9, 10. And you know, and then as the bands came out, so just a bit too young. But you know, when you listen to, say, the Too Much Too Young EP, which is all live recorded in London and Coventry on the end of the first two-tone tour, which is Selector, Madness, Specials. I mean, in that EP, you hear everything. It's magnificent.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Yeah.
You know, from time to time, you know, I've been asked, like, if you could go back and if you could go in a time machine and go anywhere, you know, to any sort of era in music time, you know, my kind of stock answer is I'd like to go to San Francisco, 1966. You know, the ballrooms and just be a part and experience that. But after doing my homework here, you know, I think, you know, part of it, man, I would sure love to have been a witness to some of those early specials and Selector, Madness shows, you know, circa 1979 in Coventry and London. Those shows just seem absolutely incredible.
I think from everybody I spoke to, the dance halls were insane. You'd get several thousand people on sprung dance floors, just bouncing and bouncing from the very first band for 3 hours, just non-stop kind of skanking. And the audience are responding to this energy on stage, where each band's got 7 members, 2 front people, and the front members are darting from side to side of the stage, and all the musicians behind them are jumping and dancing, and then sometimes they're taking off their instruments and fighting each other, and then before you know it, they've invited the audience onto the stage, and you see the photographs, and you can't see where the stage ends and the audience begins. And you know, it just seemed like this unbelievable celebration of high energy music with its roots in the Caribbean, this infectious dancing, and you know, all these kids who some of them have got the fashion straight away, dressing like rude boys, rude girls. Some of them are skinheads, some of them are mods. You know, some old hippies and rockers still there. This melting pot of musicians, just really perfectly formulated 3-minute songs that are, I mean, there's really no ballads in two-tone, so it's high energy. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, it just, you feel it on the record, but to have been there would have been sensational.
You mentioned the two-tone tour, and the initial two-tone tour, was it Special, Selector, Madness, right? Yeah. That was it. And then that sort of and I know we're jumping around here, but we're going where the horse leads us. And that sort of coincide with the incredible Top of the Pops appearance, November 8th, 1979. In the big picture, and having sort of the perspective of it, was that in a lot of ways the pinnacle of the two-tone movement of these bands? Is that tour, that exposure, Top of the Pops, was that in a lot of ways the top of the mountain or close to it in the story?
I mean, it's one of the most important moments, but I think it's the opening of the gates, because that will be I mean, Top of the Pops, there's 3 channels on British TV. If you're on, there's a weekly 30-minute music program. If you're on that, up to 20 million people may have watched it. That's a third of the population, so it's huge.
Right.
But over 1980 and 81, it wouldn't be unusual to have 3 two-tone bands or two-tone related bands on top of the Pops again, and then those tours are repeated with different reiterations of two-tone bands. So the Selector go on tour with the Body Snatchers, and then in the summer of 1980 you get the Go-Go's and the Body Snatchers and the Specials. Holly and the Italians are initially on the winter tour,
and they the Holly and the Italians sadly were kind of dismissed and booed off stage, and they ended up being replaced, correct?
Yeah, I mean, when you listen to their records, Right to Work and stuff, it's not that sound, and they didn't get treated too well. But the thing is that those bands that were hitting the charts, as you're suggesting, in the latter part of 1979, were Two-Tone maintains that pace for 2 solid years, and in tribal culture at that point, that's pretty amazing, because that first rush of punk doesn't last that long, and punk doesn't have as much commercial success. That's wrong, because it's the July gig. Dexys replaced Madness on the later tour. This spelled Selector wrong. That's the classic. Everybody on their pencil cases at school would get Selector wrong. Who knew it had a third E? But 2 years later, July 1981, the Specials have another #1 with Ghost Town, and Madness become the most successful singles band of the 1980s. 1 in 10 by UB40, latter part of 81. So the hits just keep on coming, and the tours just get bigger and bigger.
While we're here on the tour front, one thing that you lay out is, at one point there was incredible violence at these shows, and you mentioned the national front, and as a real outsider, as an American, I was trying to figure out, like, what are they doing showing up at the shows? Were they trying to recruit people? Were they trying to disrupt the shows? Like, if the Two-Tone tour is all about racial unity, what do they do? Are they coming to the shows to disrupt it? Are they looking to, but they love the music? It's sort of an interesting dichotomy there.
And talking to all of the musicians, I think there's still an element of, we just can't work this out. Even now, 40 years later, there was a tradition of neo-Nazis, right-wing elements that would go to football matches, and there was a clampdown on football. And so a lot of those kind of fans went to gigs, and violence across all gigs in this period was pretty. It was a pretty dangerous place to be, potentially. And then partly these people would turn up and cause all kinds of mayhem. There's, some of the members of the band talk about pockets of hundreds of people Zeke Heiling, and yet when the music started, they would be getting into the rhythms, and this idea that they loved reggae music, and that they could take, but they didn't want to see a black face on stage. And so those people would get, sharpened coins thrown at them, or whatever else abuse. And there's great stories in the book about the members of the bands dropping their instruments, jumping into the crowd and chasing the fascists out of the dance floor. These were bands that wouldn't put up with it. And sadly, the neo-Nazi element lasts throughout the whole career of the Specials, and it's still occasionally and would permeate around all the other bands as well. And when you listen to the lyrics of Ghost Town, too much fighting on the dance floor, bands won't play no more, that's Jerry writing about, if the violence doesn't stop, then the Specials will stop. And likewise, Madness made the same statement. They were so frustrated by the violent wings that were following them, that they said, we will have to split up.
It seems that Madness was, I don't want to say torn, but in a certain regard, I just, my perspective was that, in a certain regard, Madness sort of brought around a lot of young sort of skinhead thug kids and yet they didn't really want it to go that far and get that ugly. But that's who you listen, Matt. I think this is just my take. Out of all those bands, Madness is the early on is the band that brought in a lot of young thug skinhead kids. Yeah.
Well, they were young and skinheads, and if not thuggish, then they were very light fingered, as we say. They were into thieving and nicking, and
I see.
And I think they mixed with those kind of elements growing up, as you would in North London. Of course you would, because they're all around them. And what's wonderful is members of Madness like Suggs talk about that for them, meeting Jerry Dammers and understanding what two-tone was a journey for them as much as it was a journey for us as fans. And they were learning that there was a different way. When you're a 16, 17-year-old impressionable teenager, then sometimes you need guidance that will take you the right way. And obviously the infiltration of gigs by neo-Nazis and fascists were trying to persuade impressionable teenagers to go down a certain route. These were bands under the umbrella of two-tone saying this is an alternative where culture and great music can be harmonious, come our way. And that was literally what the battleground of a two-tone gig was. Which way are you going to go? And there's brilliant examples in the book where members of the band get talking to people backstage, and somebody in the audience will go, you know, you're the first black person I've ever spoken to in my life. Wow. And you're all right, man, you know, and I like your music. And like Limbaugh, guitarist of the Specials, he'll happily say, if it was one person at a time, that was good enough for me.
You know, Soul Sus says, wow, don't sleep on Madness.
What that mean?
It means like, I'll tell you what it means in my case, right? So I'm over here in America at the time where a lot of this is going on. So, you know, other than the first Specials record, which in my opinion transcends all space and time. It's an incredible, it's one of those records. It's like Blood on the Tracks, you know, it's like, it's that record transcends all space and time. But for a young person like me, my first exposure to Madness and to even the English beat is MTV, you know, Our House and those videos. Okay. So for me, Madness came across on MTV as sort of an MTV band. Didn't really know the history. Didn't really get that much into it at the time. So, you know, don't sleep. So in other words, I've kind of slept on Madness because I sort of excused them as being sort of part of that early MTV, you know, bands that kind of came over. In reading the book, seeing the history that they have and where they really came from the book was very informative. I really learned a lot. But my first exposure to Madness and even the English beat was just sort of like goofy videos on MTV, you know.
Oh, you know, well, Madness made great pop videos, and they were very wacky and kind of they played on that, and I mean, I think that was the reason as a kid why I was probably attracted to Madness, because they made me laugh, and they were singing about things you could understand, like, you know, playing up teachers at school and very understandable lyrics. And but you know, it belied a very clever band that was that musically wrote great pop songs, and it's why, as I say, they became the most successful singles band in the 1980s in the UK. And but you know, they did what the 60s bands did, which the Kinks and the Small Faces would have very wacky videos for their period of time.
Yeah, right.
You know, and but then, you know, you have a song like Embarrassment, which is about a black girl, you know, a child being born of a black and a white parent, and they're singing about that. And that was something in British society that people didn't do. You didn't mix races when you had kids. And there's madness. They're singing about it. And so they were political in a very, or socially political in a kind of subtle way, you know, taking a Motown beat and a great melody and finding a different way to do it. I love madness. And they've just come back from the States, haven't they, doing a tour? They're still with us.
And what's incredible is the band has remained basically the same.
Yeah, Chaz isn't there anymore at the moment, but 6 of them are the same. Yeah.
I have to mention, I need to take a sponsor break, but I just want to go back to this for a second. And because I did mention, like, to me, this record transcends all space and time. It's one of those records. And it was produced by Elvis Costello. And just the sound of this record, I just love the sound of this record. I thought Elvis Costello producing it, how did he come into play? And I know, interestingly enough, he kind of had a 2-tone release, although it was a sort of a weird thing. It wasn't really sanctioned. There's sort of a weird Elvis Costello single on 2-tone, sort of.
I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down is pressed on 2-tone. You can still find copies if you're lucky, but it wasn't ever officially released. And they ended up giving it away at gigs. And in the New York Palladium, I think in early 1981, they gave out a second pressing of it. But Costello had been following the Specials throughout the summer of 1979 and has seen them on many occasions. And he feared that if they were to go with a professional producer, that it would ruin what the Specials were. And so he said, I'll do it as an unproducer. But instead, like you're suggesting, Drew, I mean, he just brought in so many fantastic ideas. And it was like a Stones record where things like a snare drum would jump out of nowhere, a loud vocal would come out over here. He just played with the elements of it and didn't try to replicate what they were doing on stage. Try and make a record that worked on vinyl. And I think it's brilliant. You know, when they did Nightclub, he got them all some drinks and locked them in a tiny little vocal booth. And Chris Hind was there and shoved Chrissy in there. And then he just recorded whatever happened.
and I just love the sound of the record. Just when I hear that record has a real particular sound, which of course, you know, evokes emotions in all of us. You know, when you hear something like that, or like I mentioned, Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks, or you know, Revolver, or whatever. These records, these sounds touch our souls. It's incredible.
I mean, he's got a great band that are malleable, and you know, as I say, great ideas, and they're good. This is the difference, I think, with 2-tone to punk, is these are musicians that can play. And they're proud they can play, and they've been in bands already, and they've got a history. And Jerry's handpicked them all and brought them together, you know, like, and it works. It's a great. I've never heard any outtakes from that recording of the first album, but it'd be sure exciting to hear it, wouldn't it? So you can see what Jerry cut out now.
Yes, I do. This is the original photo, correct?
Yeah, in Coventry, there's a little canal basin area just on the ring road in the city centre, and that's where that was taken. They were trying to replicate the front cover of The Who, My Generation, and also Help, the Beatles album. When the photographer came up, Jerry said, I've got 2 albums to show you as a reference point. He said, this is the first one, The Who, and he forgot the Beatles one, so he couldn't remember on the day which one with the other one he wanted to use. But that's where the influence comes from for that photograph.
Fantastic. Hey, let me take a quick sponsor break. It'll be a couple minutes. Let me just run through upcoming shows and shout out the sponsors, and we'll come back and we'll continue it in like 6 or 7 minutes. Okay. All right. There you have it. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, often imitated, never duplicated. Our guest today is Daniel Rachel, talking about Too Much Too Young, the Two Tones record story. A fantastic book. I highly recommend it. Let's do some sponsor stuff. We're probably going to go a little late today. All your questions, get ready when it's question time. I'm counting on you. It is, right? It's a great, I worked hard on it. I worked hard on this one. Let me tell you, it's a thick book, man. That said, I'm counting on you for some great questions today. So let's do some sponsor stuff, and I'll see you back in a minute. Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections of music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Will that be cash or in debt?
Do you mean debit?
Yes. Sorry. Another eternally satisfied customer.
Peace, what it do? Welcome to NYHC Comics at 117 Main Street, Dobbs, Surrey, New York. I'm Debo the Pro with my homie
Lee Farley.
Welcome to the spot. Specializing in yesterday's and today's comic books, rare CGCs, toys, collectibles,
Got skateboards, old school tapes, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer.
video games, original art pieces by your favorite New York City and worldwide artists. Let's go. Skate decks all day, baby.
We also have the young reader section here for like 10 and under. Pops. People love the Pops.
Star Wars. We are New York hardcore. We always rep the scene. Let's get it on.
And we're back. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles live. Want to mention some upcoming shows. So there is a week and a couple days, because actually 1 week from today is we're doing a Bowery Electric show. This is a banger. Fury of Five, Freya, Concrete Ties, Ancient Domains, featuring members of Supertouch and Bold and Deadshot at the Bowery Electric. It's a free all ages Sunday matinee. Bring the nagging wife, bring the booger eating kid, bring grandma and grandpa. Just get your ass down to the show. So there will not be a show 1 week from today. We will be back on Wednesday, August 21st. Our old friend Tommy Ratt will be on the show. He has a book out, Punk Rock Revolution. This should be very interesting. A couple days after that, Brian Gorsinger, who just put out the Ancient Artifacts book. Many of you went to his recent event. This guy, we're going to do an incredible show and tell with this guy. A week after that, the rescheduled Chris Enriquez, fresh off tour with Spotlights and Julie Christmas. I just saw him play with Orange 9mm, will be on the show. Sunday, September 8th, celebrating the book release of Vinny Stigma, The Most Interesting Man in the World. Howie Abrams, my neighbor, who I saw this morning out in front of his building, and Vinny Stigma will be on the show. Sunday, September 22nd, Andrew Vacante, Staten Island Represent, will be on from Combust. We got Joey Shithead on the show from DOA, Sunday, September 29th. And then it's a lot of book stuff. And I'm absolutely flattered that people are thinking of me now when they have a book coming out. I'm like turning into the book guy a little bit, and I appreciate it. Danny Lilker will be on the show Sunday, October 6th, talking about it's the second edition of his book, Perpetual Conversation. So Danny Lilker coming up as well. I've mentioned it before. I must mention it again. now more so than ever, the New York Hardcore Chronicles Lives needs your support. There is a Patreon page there. There is a PayPal address right there. There's a super chat function. I know a lot of people out there watching the show. You've been watching it for a while, and I truly appreciate it. The show needs some support, some financial support. So please join Patreon, $2 a month, $5 a month. Now so more than ever, the show needs your support, and that's what enables me to work as hard as I do. Seriously, on a show like this, all week long. You know, I was working hard to get the show together, and I love it. I'm excited about the show. So yeah, of course, man. We definitely some interesting names there. Yes, of course, you can make a lump sum donation to support the show. That would be great. There's the PayPal address right there. Stone4124 at AOL. If it's Venmo that you use, reach out to me. I'll send you the Venmo address. I should post the Venmo address. I should get that rolling. Or check. Listen, any way, shape, or means supporting the show would just be fantastic. Also, now that Organic Grill has gone by the wayside, if there's anybody out there that's interested in sponsoring the show, there's room for one more sponsor on the boat. So if anybody has any interest in that, but there you go. There's the Patreon page. There's the PayPal page. Very easy. Stone4124 at AOL.com. There's a super chat function, etc., etc. Yes, Danny Boy was great. That was a great show. But we're in the business of doing great shows. So that said, let's clear the deck and let us bring our guest back on. I think I covered everything. And you know, I want to mention just at this juncture that Daniel's coming to New York. That he's doing a bit of an American tour, and we will be doing it live here in New York City on Thursday, September 12th at Rough Trade in Rockefeller Plaza. So please, if you're in New York and you'd like to witness this live, this is going to be happening live. Let's bring him back on. Hey, man.
Hello.
Sorry to interrupt you, man. Yeah. So I was telling you, listen, we're going to do it live. You know?
Yeah, I can't believe it. It's like just coming to New York's just really exciting, you know. It'd be great.
And that store is like it's next to Radio City Music Hall. It's right it's right in the middle of it. It's the location's pretty wild, you know. It's like right in the middle of it. Let's continue on our journey. Do you have a heart out? Could you go for a little while longer?
Yeah, sure. If I haven't bored you.
No, not at all. We're just getting going. Let me ask you.
Just self-deprecation.
What, in your opinion, what made the Selector so special?
Pauline Black as a front in the band, and Neil Davis as the songwriter. That was a formidable, just that for starters. And then the same thing, I think, with the Specials. I mean, you've got this just eclectic mix of people coming from different Caribbean islands with different influences. But you know, just immediately, Pauline Black, when we talked about the two-tone tour, I mean, that was 40 musicians and one woman. And just weeks before, Pauline had been performing in pubs, playing Sandy Denny songs and Joan Armatrading on an acoustic guitar. And then suddenly she's fronting a rock band. And you would have thought she'd been doing it all her life. You know, the confidence on stage, the confidence in the recording studio was immense. And I think she was a natural born front woman, you know, just incredible. And then next to her was Gaps, who just died recently. And again, that dual attack of two front people, dancing and really delivering it to the stage. Yeah, I mean, but ultimately they had some really great 3-minute songs, and most of them were written by Neil Davis, the only white man in the band.
Yeah,
I mean, they're a combustible outfit, the Selector. I mean, they
fought a lot, that band, it seems.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of fights in this book. If you like fights, then you can get it in an audience, and you can get as much thing going on stage in the bands, in the recording studio, and it gets into all the gritty details. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the reverse of Gangsters was a song called The Selector by a band called The Selector. That band was fictitious. And then Limbal in the Specials said, if you lot get together with her and form a band, you could come on tour with us and be the next two-tone band. And then suddenly they become The Selector when they release On My Radio. And then by the summer of the following year, they kind of split up and have to reform, and it's all over. You know, it's it's a short burn with them for sure, but they made an impact, and they made some exciting records.
It seems that once Jerry and the Specials kind of blasted off, and the momentum happened, Selector, Madness, and then the Beat, and I quote, this is a quote, I think maybe Roger from the Beat or Dave, well, success happened fast for these bands. Quote, we didn't have this long period of getting the band together, touring and finding members and writing songs. Suddenly it just went bam. It was a silent film being sped up. It seemed that it seemed that for some of these bands, you know, they got together, you know, played out, and they just were sort of swept up in this incredible cultural movement.
I think that's exactly right. You know, illustrated by Rankin Roger. He was 15 at the beginning of 1979 at school, a schoolboy. And then he leaves before he does his exams. As a little kid, is jumping on stage in Moseley in Birmingham. 1 week with UB40, another week with the Beat, back with UB40, then the Beat, and then he has to choose which band to go with, and he goes with the Beat, and then next thing he knows, he's top of the charts, and 20 million people have just watched him on national television, and he hasn't even had his 16th birthday. It's that rise is so typical. You know, the Selector, they decide to form in the summer of 1980, and then top 5 on my radio by October 1980. I mean, the pace of it is insane. Yeah. Madness do the Prince in that same period. Their album comes out in the same week of the Specials album, and Madness never stops. But I think what's fascinating, particularly as musicians, or for me as a former musician, is that the musicians are running two-tone essentially. Yeah. And they're suddenly having to go and do a new radio interview, a magazine interview, a live session on the radio. They've got a British tour. They've got an American tour. They're going off to Europe. They've got to go in the studio. How is the label being run? Yeah. It's just like insane. It's like become this incredible thing. And Two-Tone is run by 14 musicians. It's a cooperative. 7 Selector, 7 Madness. I mean, 7 Special, sorry.
In a way, in retrospect, it seems to me that it was almost more of an imprint than like a regular functioning sort of traditional label. Although Chrysalis handled the promotion and stuff, it seemed like it a bit falls under the category a bit of sort of like an imprint. Whereas a lot of bands like the Madness ended up moving on to Stiff Records. I think the Beat went on to Arista. You know, people just sort of came through there. It was like a gateway to a lot of big major labels, and like you said, a lot of these bands. I think Madness and the Beat. There were labels that there was like a bidding war to sign them, right?
Yeah. So like the Beat went, like you say, with Arista, but they were given their own boutique label. Go Feet.
Go Feet, right?
Madness signed with Stiff. Body Snatchers did a second single with Two Tone. The thing is, yes, Chrysalis were responsible for marketing and distribution, but the marketing ideas had to go back through Jerry Dammers.
Right.
And so nothing got decided unless he okayed it. But if he, say, was on tour and was in Michigan, then somehow somebody's got to get on an old-fashioned landline in London and wait for the moment when Jerry is going to be at the hotel and not at a sound check, and try and get him on the phone to agree to some artwork that he can't even see until he goes back to England. And so how it managed to function is quite insane, really. But there was a crucial difference with Chrysalis, because in the UK, Two Tone, everything had to be branded with the Two Tone look and the artwork of Two Tone. In North America, Chrysalis didn't have to use any of the Two Tone branding.
Right. And I think that plays a little bit into what I mentioned before about Madness and some of these other bands. Over here in America, the imagery didn't really come along with it. So the Specials were the Specials, of course, you know, that imagery. But initially, like Madness, to me, I didn't associate them with it over here where I was at the time. You know, Christina says, well, that's kind of shitty. They just ditched Two Tone. Well, Christina, the way that Two Tone was set up, it was okay. There was no contracts. There was nothing. Bands, this is the way that Jerry set it up, is that bands, they would sign, it was like a collective. They would sign bands for a single or two, and they had the autonomy to go where they would. Is that right, Daniel?
That's exactly right. That was Jerry's vision. He was a socialist, if not a Marxist. He didn't want to control other musicians. He wanted to help them. He wanted Two Tone to have a large impact in number. And if that meant that somebody just came, like you say, and did one song and then off they went, that was great for Jerry. He didn't want any more than that. So there was no kind of dumping on Two Tone at all. I think, sadly, from some of the artwork I've seen when Specials and Selector came to North America, it plays up a kind of simplified version of what they were. It was a bit sillier, and then Madness, I don't know if they were associated at all with Two Tone. I mean, they did their initial shows with the Go-Go's on the West Coast at the Whiskey before, and then the Go-Go's came back and played and did some UK dates, and this was all before a good solid year before they had their #1 album. But yeah, I mean, it didn't quite work out in the States. I mean, the Selector went down to see Dallas to find out who shot JR.
Right.
They just got a load of racist abuse, so they didn't get on very well. But the Specials, I mean, I've heard quite a lot of bootlegs of the Specials in America, and they went out to Long Island, and Debbie Harry introduced them, and just the audience response was extraordinary to them, you know.
Yeah. So just sort of jumping ahead a little bit, because we want to be able to sort of close it out and then take questions from people. At what point, not that that's going to happen anytime soon, but at what point do with this sort of infrastructure set up, at what point do the cracks start to show with Two Tone? At what point does sort of you know, like they say, you know, if enough ants get on an elephant in the jungle, eventually it's going to go down, right? So at what point does it sort of, do the cracks in Two Tone start to show? I mean, I know along the timeline there's a lot of releases. You know, the Body Snatchers were an incredibly interesting group, the first all girl, you know, ska group, and but at what point does the things start to get a little weathered, in your opinion?
I think success, fame, changes certain people or exaggerates people's personalities. So if you're a drinker, you're going to drink more. If you're into drugs, you're going to take more drugs. You know, I think that had a definite influence at different stages. If I think the class differences that we spoke about early on became exaggerated, the differences in the types of people they were and what experiences they wanted. For some of the bands going to the States, that kind of endless, monotonous drives when you're not when you're trying to get when you're not on the east or west coast,
Sure.
it was tough for a lot of young English musicians. That played into it. When the royalty checks came in and the key songwriters or the soul songwriters got more. I mean, it was like the history of rock and roll was all being dumped on two-tone, and the whole lot happened for them, really. But
and then a lot of the groups have 7, 8, 9 members.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But counter to that is that Madness are itinerant youngsters who, because of their various backgrounds, they are able to draw strength from one another, and so they have longevity. Jerry has said to me in the past, "Why weren't we like the Beat? They were so nice." And I think the Beat were very kind and thoughtful people and cared and looked out for one another, and so they were able again to go on a lot longer. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to all those different elements. They just eat at the band very early on, I'd say.
Excuse me, but I would think that, like you mentioned about Jerry having like real control over everything, which in the beginning was an incredible blessing. I would think that as things sort of played out, there'd be certain members or certain people or certain bands that just don't want to operate under that umbrella anymore.
Well, the great illustration, perhaps, is watching the Get Back films with Paul McCartney. Now, if you've got Paul McCartney in your band, why would you not want a musical genius like that to be directing the musical arrangements? Because if he gives his thought and value to it in the same way as Jerry Dammers, you're going to get something special. But there's always going to be, because you've spent so much time in the studio, you're going to get somebody grumbling like George Harrison for even it's only for a couple of hours occasionally. Then but it's hard if somebody's got the drive, the vision, and knows how it should be. This is how it can work. And can McCartney, can Jerry Dammers rein in their forward drive? And it seems sometimes they can't, and I think in the Selector there was a lot of suspect personalities, and they'd come through a lot of these kids. Some of them had left their homelands to come to Britain, having not seen their parents for up to 10 years, suddenly come to England and experience racism for the first time in their life. Then they're dumped in a band. Then they find out that their 21-year-old manager's white. The only songwriter in the band is white. They take out their resentment on the wrong people, but they do take out their resentments, and so it implodes. The Body Snatchers, and then their story is just insane. You've got upper class, middle class, working class, people that don't know how to deal with each other, and lots of fighting again.
You mentioned the Body Snatchers, which like I said, was like the first all-girl, ska group. According to the book, they were inspired by the Slits, right? We mentioned Ari up at the top of the show. Was that a bit of a gimmick that was played out, sort of the all-girl ska band initially? Were they taken seriously? Could they stand up to? Could they sort of run with the musicality of these other bands?
They formed out of absolute seriousness to do something great and not to be patronized by men. So they wanted to do something on their terms. Unfortunately, some of them had little experience or less experience in playing the kind of music that they wanted to do within the Body Snatchers. And so I've listened to some early tapes, and they're quite raw and rudimentary. But like Nikki, who formed the band, she was coming from the punk thing. Just get your instrument and get on stage and do it, because that's the punk spirit.
Sure.
But as we know, Two Tone was not like that. It had solid, great musicianship, and they could put on a show and play well. So the Body Snatchers had to change and improve very, very quickly. I mean, the stories in the book where they start a song and it collapses, they start it again, it collapses.
Yeah, like 5 times, right? Like 5 times, yeah.
They appeal to the audience. So we try again. Do you want us to give it another go? Yeah, give it another go.
Yeah.
But they found their way, and within 3 or 4 months, they've got an original set all written. They end up doing over 200 gigs in their brief 13 months together as a band. They make a couple of singles. They get on films. It's a sad end, and then of course Rhoda joins the Specials, and she brings with her the Boiler, this song record here. There's the spoken word piece about male violence, which ends in a rape.
It is
an incredible record.
Let's go there. That's a very disturbing. That's a very disturbing song. I mean, it's really hard to listen to. I was a bit taken aback and surprised that it charted so high for a record that it's basically sort of like a running commentary of this poor gal that goes out with this guy and ends up being like date raped. I was really surprised to see how high it actually charted in the UK.
It's quite incredible. But I mean, the single before is Ghost Town, one of the most iconic songs of the era. And then imagine a band today, imagine Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift after their, an early #1, they do a spoken word piece about rape. The audacity to do that is quite incredible. And then you think of the Specials on that last North American tour with the opening for the Police on a lot of dates, and they were performing the Boiler at those gigs. They did it in the British tour. And, it's difficult to listen to because the last minute of the song,
it's rough.
Is all screaming because of what's been physically done to her by a man, and it's painful to listen to. But it was challenging, an epidemic that we still have across the world of male violence, and it's as important then as it was as it is today. And I personally think it's one of the most important records in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah, it was incredible. Things start to wane a little bit at Two Tone. I think the hand's getting played out, and then Jerry comes up with this, and really, like almost like an anomaly. It becomes a huge international smash hit, a call to arms. And he ends up organizing the Festival for Freedom, which was attended by 500,000 people. Could you give us some perspective on this release and the Festival for Freedom?
Well, maybe it was like a typical kid in England in 1984. I didn't know when this came out. I didn't know who Nelson Mandela was. And I flipped over the record, and on the back was an explanation of who he was and who the African National Congress were. And at that time in the British Parliament, the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, said the African National Congress was a terrorist organization. And he was the leader. He'd been in prison since the early 60s, 21 years at this point. And Jerry writes this anthemic song that gets adopted by black kids in South Africa. But more importantly, after doing that first concert in South London, he puts on 2 concerts at Wembley Stadium. A global audience of 600 million watch it on television. And then Stevie Wonder and Whitney Houston and Annie Lennox, they all come and they sing, and the big finale is to sing Nelson Mandela. And at the 1990 concert, Nelson Mandela walked out on stage. And if that isn't the pinnacle of two-tone, I mean, nothing can top that. It's quite incredible that this guy who had this crazy idea of black and white musicians coming together in a band called The Specials, a movement called Two-Tone, a way to stop the neo-Nazis and the far right at the gigs taking hold. And the end piece is to do this incredible kind of soul influenced Booker T and the MG's James Taylor Quartet track, talking about freeing this freedom fighter for the liberation of South Africa from apartheid. And it's a sensational end piece to the book and to the career of Jerry Dammers and the story of Two Tone.
Yeah, it's great. And as Two Tone winds down, the last couple of releases, the Friday Club window shopping, I think JB's All Stars Alphabet Army, I believe, was the last official Two Tone
That's
release.
right.
Was it?
Yeah.
How does it end? In the end, there. How does it end? Why does it end? What's the fine? How does that initial run of Two Tone and why does it come to an end like that?
Well, the first run really ends with the Fun Boy 3 leaving the Specials, Terry Hall,
Yeah.
Neville Staple, and Lynval Golding, and so the Specials collapse.
Right.
And then Jerry tries to reform it.
Right.
Not as successfully. He hasn't got Terry Hall. Basically, he's got songs, but he hasn't got the front man anymore. And somebody as brilliant as Terry Hall,
He was
he
great.
tries to introduce a kind of a funk soul, a few signings that doesn't really work. He tries, it just slowly dies on. Jerry's folding in on himself. He's having his own personal problems. He's struggling to know how to run this label. He's getting further and further into debt because the third Specials album is costing more and more and more money, just incredible amount.
Was that Specials in the studio? Was that the third one?
Especially in the studio.
Sure.
And apart from Nelson Mandela, there's not a notable hit on the record.
Right.
And so it ends with everybody deserting the sinking ship, and Jerry's the last man standing, and so he goes under with the debt wrapped around him like a noose.
Wow. You mentioned Terry Hall leaving, and this record, and I know I'm going back a little bit here, but this was an interesting record. I know it was really influenced by sort of Muzak from after their American tour, and the second side of this record is very different, sort of not what we were thinking, what was coming down the line with the Specials. And I guess at this point, a lot of members were not really happy. This was about the direction that Jerry was taking it, and this did and Pat Baldwin says a radical departure, but brilliant. This seems like really sowed the seeds for a couple people's departure. Is that safe to say?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they recorded this album 6 months after the release of the first album. Wow. And I think the atmosphere in the studio was that they were making something magnificent. Mm-hmm. Many of them Terry Hall commented at the time that he thought they were making the best music they'd ever done. Horace, the bass player, thought that this was some of the greatest stuff he'd ever heard. It was recorded piecemeal, but no, I think everybody supported the new idea, and they record it in April 1980, and then they tour it towards the end of the year, and by that point, songs like Stereotype become these really exciting live tracks with the drummer just laying down 4 on the floor with the drum pattern, and it really becomes more anthemic than the recorded version. Of course, in North America, you get the extra track of Rat Race on it, which wasn't on the UK version. Yeah. And yeah, there was an experimental side to it, but I think that's what's given it its longevity and why it had such a profound influence on particularly a lot of 90s music. And then, again, there was jokes on the artwork. Jerry put this pink sticker on the front to cover the E so that it reads MOR, middle of the road, which was a kind of
right.
It's a joke. This girl was a friend of Jerry's, Pat. This is an outtake, this version. But I think it's an absolutely brilliant move and sensational that they only recorded within 6 months of the first album. Yeah, I think the problem is a year later, in 81 when they tried to record the Ghost Town EP.
Mm-hmm.
The band do not understand Ghost Town. They don't
Right.
understand the Arabic wailing. They don't understand Jerry's strange chord changes. They scream at him in the studio. They're kicking holes into the walls of the studio. There's all kinds of arguments going on. No, it's the Ghost Town EP that really they're against. Somebody's saying how much they love Do Nothing. And Do Nothing's a great song, and on the single version you get Jerry's strings on it as an added, different from the album version. It's it's just packed with goodies, that second album.
I've listened to it a couple of times, and with each listen, I found it more and more enjoyable. At first, I was like, wow, what's going on here? Like, especially the second side confused me a bit.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is really different. And also, I think that also coming off the live EP that they did, which is really powerful. So I mean that live EP that I guess that really documented that incredible moment in time of their live shows.
Yeah, but like all bands, it's like it's the end. We wrestle with this, don't we, as music fans? As we kind of want a band to repeat themselves, so you have more joy of the same.
Sure.
At the same time, the bands that do try and repeat themselves, you always end up being disappointing by that album. Most great bands follow the trajectory of the Beatles, don't they? Where you can feel the radical progression, but you just want a brilliance to be with the progression.
I think that for me, as a record buying youth, not having the perspective and the knowledge, certainly, now or that, as a young person, yes, you hear this record and, you hear the first Specials record or the first Agnostic Front record or the first Clash record. And, when the next record comes out, that's what you want to hear. You're not as flexible and forgiving, as you get when you get a little bit older, and you can go, oh wow, doing some different stuff. I hear these influences. I love it. I kind of chalk it up in my case to sort of the youthful enthusiasm of a music lover. That said, let me take a quick sponsor break, and we'll come back and we'll take some questions from around the world. Okay?
Right, wow.
All right. There you have it. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Please, questions for our guest, Daniel Rachel. I know a couple people have reposted to the show a couple questions, the bit about bad manners, is that, let it fly right now. Go deep, get weird. Just let's do it. We got Daniel for a little bit longer. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We are sponsored by blah, 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 and Mad Vintage. They buy, sell, and collect band shirts, primarily hardcore. The DIY operation was started and is operated by a hardcore kid who just loves collecting and eventually got into vintage clothing, specifically the realm of vintage band shirts. They are always looking to buy out collections to either keep, sell, or trade. New shirts added daily at www.madvintage.com and posted on Instagram. Dig deep into that closet of crap and reach out to them. Help me help you, Mad Vintage. Last but not least, Joe Ramini and the Texas Silver Rush. They're a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in working with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as to style them for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Roulet, Ringo Starr, and of course, Agnostic Front. Information on online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram pages, and of course, www.thetexassilverrush.com. Want to mention a couple of upcoming events. This is live events that are coming up 1 week from today at the Bowery Electric. It is the Back to the New York Hardcore Roots Series, free all-ages Sunday matinee, Fury of 5, Freya, Concrete Ties, Ancient Domain, and Deadshot. This is going to be a banger. We'll see you down there. This was just announced. We will see you in Philly, my friends. I am moderating the Ray Capo From Punk to Monk book signing and Q&A down at Creep Records in Philly. Come on, Philly people, represent. on Friday, September 6th. We mentioned this a couple times on the show. Very excited. Come on down. See me and Daniel do it live at Rough Trade at 30 Rockefeller Plaza on September 12th. Sunday, September 15th at the Bowery Electric Free All Ages Sunday Matinee. Scream, the Mighty Rebelmatic, Butterbrain, the Errorists, and Lake Lanier. Saturday, October 12th, up at Queen's Pins in Middletown, New York, RBNX, ID, Crazy Eddie, Redwoods, Leave It Behind, and Prize Fighter. Yes, incredible but true. ID is playing outside the New York City subway system. Big Banger, Sunday, October 13th, ID headlining with Winterwolf, Midnight Foolishness, The Phoenix Within, and Gunk at the Bowery Electric. I will be hosting the Danny Lilker Perpetual Conversion 2nd edition book signing at Generation Records on October 25th and up at Bridge 9. Yo, I'm just doing like a mad moderating, book tour. Saturday, September 7th, I will be up at Bridge 9 with Howie and Vinny celebrating his book. And then last but not least, Sunday, December 22nd, the annual holiday slamboree put on by Women of the Pit at the Bowery Electric. So come on out. We'd love to see your face. Any questions for Daniel regarding Two-Tone History, the book, please post them up. Let's bring them back on. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Okay, fair enough, because this has come up. Talk about Fun Boy 3. My perception was, in a certain regard, like I said, seeing on MTV, Fun Boy 3 was Terry Hall and two of the other guys from the Specials who broke kind of away from Jeffrey and Two-Tone and sort of made a go at it in a bit more of a commercial vein. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and then it's the second album that's all important with them, I'd say, really. We went produced by David Byrne, Waiting. The American single was Pressure of Life, which is a very, very different version to the album version, but it's a really fabulous record. The breakaway single had been the Lunatics had taken over the Asylum, which the three of them recorded when they were still in the Specials. That would have been the follow-up to Ghost Town. But Jerry says they thought it was so good they wanted to do their own band, they made some great singles and a great second album, and then two albums into it, Terry was off again and wanted to do a new project. But definitely worth, if you don't know the David Byrne album, that produced album, that's well worth hearing.
Makes sense. Pat Baldwin asks, did Two-Tone ever grow a large black fan base? And was ska's decline part of a larger pop trend towards less labor-intensive black music?
There was always a sadness amongst Two-Tone musicians that there weren't more black people in the audience. It depended where they were playing and in what cities. And there are certain photographs you can see, and there's a real beautiful contrast of skins of color at the gig, but I think it's fair to say it was a majority white, but then the country was majority white, so why not, but a labor intensive black music, I don't think there is anything as black music. I agree with Berry Gordy. There's black musicians, there's not black music in the same way as not white music, there's white musicians, but music in Britain at that time, if not in the US as well, changed very, very quickly. And as a top of the show, as Two-Tone was breaking big in 1980, so Adam the Ants broke, and then suddenly New Romantics broke through. But Two-Tone sustains for a longer period than you might have imagined.
It seems to me, in a certain regard, Two-Tone really came to the forefront sort of, at the end of punk, before the New Romantics thing sort of came. There was this space in time where Two-Tone really ruled the world. This is a great question from one of our beloved sponsors and friends, Mark Yoshi at Generation Records. Great question, bro. Is it fair to say most of the two-tone bands had disappointing second LPs? Were most of them rushed?
Well, what are the second albums? So Absolutely by Madness. It's got some great singles on it immediately. Is that as disappointing? Perhaps it hasn't quite got the thrill of the first album, but it's. I know many people think that's one of their great records.
Yeah,
go on. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say we just went through the special second record, and for a lot of people, it was an incredibly influential record, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is a magnificent record. The Beats' second album, What Happened with Doors Your Heart and Get a Job. I mean, the thing is that the second albums move, and if you've got your foot in the past and wanting that, then you'll always be disappointed. If you're going with the change, then I don't think then they work, and I think they are strong records. Yeah, UB40's second album's brilliant. Dex's second album's Tu Raye. No, I think the progression is strong.
GXS, we didn't touch on this. Talk about Dance Craze, the two-tone concert film. We didn't touch on that, and I didn't get a chance to watch it again. It just was unavailable on. I couldn't get, so I didn't get a chance to watch. Although I watched individual clips. What was for those the uninitiated? What was Dance Craze, and what did it do for two?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole chapter on Dance Craze, and it covers the CIA and drug deals in Cuba, and Joseph Losey's son, the great filmmaker. There's mad elements behind it. It was an attempt by Joe Massot, who had worked on George Harrison's Wonderwall, and the song remains the same as the director, to make a film of the two-tone movement. And over 1980, he filmed all the bands live, including Bad Manners, and he put them all. But then he was sacked off the film, and so what it ends up being is 90 minutes, pretty much, of non-stop live footage, back to back, of all the bands. And interestingly enough, the Beat were filmed in the States, Emerald City.
Yeah. Interesting. Kind of coming from me here. In retrospect, what is Two Tone's legacy? Having the perspective of time, in your opinion. I know it really lasted like 18 months. It was like a 2-year blip. In your opinion, these years later, what was Two Tone's legacy?
Well, I think in the UK, the legacy was very quick, and it was the magnificent Wembley Stadium concerts for Nelson Mandela, and then Mandela being there. You could talk also of the sustaining influence of the records. You could talk about the bands that were reforming almost out of demand in the 2000s up until the English beat, as they call it in North America, still plays. The Selector will be in the States this year, and they still play. The Specials reformed and got a #1 album, the Fun Boy Specials, and then I suspect what on the West Coast is what happened in the early 90s and around No Doubt and Gwen Stefani and the bands that there was, which I don't know very much about, I'm afraid, but I understand that scene was huge, and it prompted a load of the original two-tone musicians to come over to the States and form variations of the original bands like International Beat and Special Beat, and then they end up playing to bigger audiences than they ever did in the UK. So ultimately, for me, I would say that the ultimate legacy is the music that we have on vinyl. You can go back to, and if you're like me, you'll find it just brilliant and joyful.
Yeah. And in my notes, I have to ask, what are your personal favorites from the catalog? Is there anything that really touched you early on as a younger person, and something that still holds a special place in your heart in the Two-Tone catalog?
If you have the Dance Craze soundtrack, the album, the last song, Nightclub, I just formed an affinity with that live, with the band jamming at the beginning, with the extended instrumental in the middle, and I just blasted that forever, and I still do. And the Two-Tone, Too Much Too Young EP, I think is one of the greatest EPs ever recorded. That's bearing in mind the specials and the Beatles and the Kinks EPs. And it just my love for Matt. It's just so many songs, really. Yeah, those two particularly.
Fantastic.
Nightclub and Too Much Too Young EP.
Fantastic. I want to say that the book is Too Much Too Young. Incredible. It's the Two-Tone record story. I read the whole thing. It is incredibly informative. I highly recommend it. You could pick it up. Our friend Johnny Temple and Akashic Books has it. And I want to personally thank Johnny for reaching out to me and hooking me up with Daniel, and looking forward to all our friends here in New York. Of course, I mentioned it again. We'll be doing this live on Thursday, September 12th, here in New York City. So please come on down, buy the book. That said, let me just make sure. Yeah, get a copy now. Absolutely. Arthur, buy it. Arthur, as a lover of this kind of music, you will cherish this book. It is incredibly informative. Thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it. Is there anybody you want to thank? Anybody you want to shout out?
No, I mean, it's just super exciting being on a radio show in New York, and then I'm going to come and meet you, Drew. Which it's just been great on the show, and I'm looking forward to the event at Rough Trade and the whole tour.
Yeah, and you know what? You are in Jersey City the day before, and I'm on the west side of Manhattan. It's 20 minutes from me, so if I can, I'm going to come and say hi in Jersey City the day before, and then we'll do it the next day. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Pat Baldwin. It was a fantastic interview, and I knew it was going to be great. That said, thank you, Daniel. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Thanks very much, Drew. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. There you have it. Another one in the books. The New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today was Daniel Rachel. What a fantastic show. Is that right? Where in Jersey City? Let me see. I have it somewhere here. That book place in Jersey City. I don't know where the flyer is. I don't know where I put it, but yeah, he's doing a whole tour. Where is that? Let me see if I can find it. Upcoming events. I don't know what I did with it, but guest for show 350. We were just talking about this. Today. Guest for 350. Possible guests for 350. I talked to John. I saw John Brannon the other night from Negative Approach and talked to him. Keith Morris, Waddy. But you know what I'm leaning to? I'm leaning towards Monty Connor, the A&R guy from Roadrunner, who signed so many bands, and having Howie Abrams co-host it. So that's the wish list there. But I think for 350, I'd like to do it with Howie and have Monty come on, and just this guy. It'd be an incredible show with Monty Connor. But we'll see. John Brannon, Keith Morris, that kind of a thing. Thank you, Al, and thank you, Darren, and thank you, John. It was great. He was a great guest, and this book. I learned a lot. About Two-Tone. Daryl Jennifer won't come on the show. We've asked Daryl early. He won't come on. He wouldn't do something like this. And I won't get into the particulars. You just ordered the book. Fantastic. Fantastic. Daniel's written a bunch of other books that we didn't mention. He also, a lot of this stuff cross-pollinates. He wrote this book too. He did a ranking Roger book that he did. So and a bunch of other stuff. What else do I got here? Well, this is the other book that he mentioned about the politics. This is a book that I'd actually like. This is his book that I'd like to read this next. This looks like what I want to read. Which of Daniel's books I want to read next? This the music and politics. When are we going to see another movie episode? I'm not sure. Haven't thought about that. We should do another one. It has to be like an epic movie. We got to bring like a real, You know what I was thinking of doing? A Warriors movie, because I'm friends with Thomas Waits, who was in the Warriors, and could probably bring him on. Maybe we should do like a Warriors episode. Thank you, Gregor. I appreciate it, man. It's a good episode. We're in the business of doing great episodes. The Deer Hunter. Oof, I don't know, man. That's a heavy film, man. The Deer Hunter. Stressful film. A lot of screaming and here it is. I got it, man. I got it. Here is Daniel's book tour. He's going to be on September 12th. No, on September 11th in Jersey City at the Word Bookstore is where he's doing his thing. He does, right? Tom W. Yeah, I think he'd be a good guest. Is that right? They did Rock and Roll High School on another channel. Yeah. Yeah, I could do the Warriors justice. I mean, I could take pictures. I live right across, walking distance right here in the park where they shot Cyrus. I see right here, literally. Every time I walk out, I see the freaking thing. So we could do the Warriors. That said, anything else? I think we're good. Thank you, Count. Monty, Circle Jerks, Negative Approach, Exploit. Yeah, that's what we're looking at for 350. Thank you, Sean. Guitar player in ID. Great show we played in Maryland the other day. Thank you, Ramon. Great. Thanks, Lou. Hey, enough of me talking about me. It was great. I will see many of you a week from today. And then the rest of you I will see a week from Wednesday for Tommy Rat. It's good to a little space in between the shows. I really feel like gives me a chance to really do my homework. Yeah, Joey Shithead supposedly once again, Joey Shithead is lined up to be on the show Sunday, September 29th. He's going to be on the show. But, he's one of these guys that we've chased around for a couple years. But we will, even if he doesn't, we will stay on him. We will get him on the show. Even if he cops out on the 29th. That's a guy we're getting on the show. It's going to happen. So thanks a lot, everybody. Fantastic show. Please, if you can, support the show. There's the Patreon page. If you can make a donation on PayPal, it's real easy. Stone4124. The show really needs your support now more than ever. A couple years in, we would appreciate it. Be good, everybody. Until next time, do good things, and good things will come to you.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age.